Wow. Hi, everybody. Marissa, alcoholic. Derek, thank you so much. And thanks everyone just who's helping and everyone who's here, just for taking time in your night to be here, for this commitment that you have to your sobriety, for showing up. Some of you I know are here because I am, and that means a lot to me. And so you're all part of it. Like, I think I'm just what I want to do is try to authentically as possible share exactly where I'm at right now at 526 days and how steps 1, 2, and 3 have really played into that. And it might sound a little backwards while I go. I kind of think that way, but because I've had a year and a half now, I can put some pieces together that I couldn't before, that maybe can help and not help, throw out a whole different way of how it's working out in my life is what I'm really trying to say. So, and right now I'm in a really sensitive place right now. I just cracked open some stuff and I'm hitting a lot of new things. And so, and I'm recognizing how hard emotions are and how present God is. This part about what I heard loud and clear about what we're talking about, how I got connected to my higher power and how I keep that alive in me. And it's just that emoji for real, right? So when I got into this program, just a little bit about me. I mean, I was born to parents that really weren't ready to parent. So basically what that means in a nutshell for my life was that I had a brother that was 18 months younger than me, and my parents left us in different places, like literally put us, quote, like solicitation up in a place for someone to take care of you and your brother. So, I mean, it wasn't even babysitters or anything, right? So that was like 1 through 6 for me. And then, or 7. And so then things got a little more stable in the household. But the thing is that I also come from a family where the reality is that our emotions are inherited too. So there was a lot of quietness around things. And that was how it was. You know, you go to work, that's what you do, no matter what. You're defined by your work. But then it was taken a little further in my household because my parents were both just really not healthy. And so basically my role became the person to sort of make sure that everything was okay. So you can't talk about real things that are happening. Living in a small town of 1,000 people where, you know, where my story is that, okay, so when you're in a town that small, I don't know, for those of you that have the experience, everybody knows everybody's business. And the thing is, we weren't from that town. That was a town, like I was from the city. I was from the east side of the city, and it was not a pretty part of that city. And so I grew up pretty rough, and I still had that connection. So I'm going, my mom and all this mess, when finally she decides to step in and parent, whatever that looked like, right? Then we're having this dichotomy, right, of having to go and be in this other household where it's this the shotgun house, you know, all of it, living on the just really not a lot of access to resources and not a lot of support around it. And if you wanted to even try to have a different type of story, it just wasn't even, the people around you in the places just weren't very welcoming to that at all. And they weren't forgiving to you if you wanted to try anything really. So then I'm going back to this small town, right? Carrying all this stuff, but you can't talk about that either. Anyway, this isn't the point of anything. The point that I want to share is that there was always this sort of light inside of me, and I didn't know what it was. And it was always telling me when I was going to get I could never tell a lie about anything. Never. And this is one of the things that I've discovered through this steps 1, 2, and 3. It's God, right? Like these times in my life, like, so I'm like, God, I remember agonizing over this. Like, why do other kids get away with stuff? I'm a goodie. Like, I can't do anything wrong. And I lived in the household where my parents, like, I had chores that weren't major chores. And not only like clean the entire garage and then go back and clean it again. And, oh, look in this corner, there's still stuff here. It became a 2-day cleaning because it was just never good enough, right? So then this is the other context of my growing up. Once my mom inserted herself, it was just try to achieve something. We won't give you quite what you need to get there, but you still better get there. But even when you do, it doesn't matter. Don't tell anyone. And by the way, you still didn't quite get it. So go try again. I mean, this is just a constant cycle, right? So through this stuff, this got like, I would get in trouble, but only for little things, but little things that were always big, right? Because then what happens is you're already living in a lie. You're building up these things. And then you're to this point where you just like, I was just an honest person from the beginning. I was born that way. So it's just almost impossible for me to live any other way, but I was being forced to. So what happens to me is I just never had this urge to drink. And the first time alcohol, like I always had this as a compass. And the other thing that was happening to me was that I was becoming a person, sorry, 5 minutes? Okay, cool. I was becoming a person who was gradually just learning that that wasn't a way I wanted to do it so anymore. So what I want you to take from this part is that through doing steps 1, 2, 3, I've been able to really learn how to apply how this works in my life. So one of the ways that I've learned to apply it is really taking that time to read through Bill's story over and over and over and over and over again, and the doctor's opinion, and really look at the reality in that this is the first time that, I mean, the radical nature of suggesting that there's something that's not a medicine, that's something that's alternative that can lead to our recovery. So going into this with that was huge for me because I also came in from a really structured concept of church. And so I didn't know how to let go of that. And what also I learned through doing steps 1, 2, and 3 really was that and progress, not perfection in this, is that this practice piece is so critical. And that the way that you get closer, that what I learned through steps 1, 2, and 3 is that I really have to practice. And that means slowing everything down. And it really means saying, that's what all this clearing up for me has to do, and how I understand step 1, that I'm understanding every single day that I need to remind myself of, like, this isn't something that I just got figured out, right? And so I just kind of want to, like, I was not intending to kind of be so overarching in this, but because of time's purposes, I want to just show us a little bit of what happened. So I'm working on this stuff right now. And as I'm getting into this digging deeper stuff, what's being presented to me is this constant reminder of the spirituality piece. And so today, what was shared with me was, and some of you probably have read it, but from the Oxford group and talking about how AA grew in part out of the Oxford group. But the part that really stuck out for me is when Carl Jung is talking about, and he says, my attitude to these matters is that as long as a patient is really a member of a church, he ought to be serious. He ought to be really and sincerely a member of that church, and he should not go to a doctor to get his conflict settled when he believes that he should do it with God. For instance, when a member of the Oxford group comes to me in order to get treatment, I say, you are in the Oxford group. So long as you are there, you settle your affair with the Oxford group. I can't do it better than Jesus. And this is like, wow, like we have so much more. What steps 1, 2, and 3 taught me is that I am responsible for my actions, and it's geeking me out how it's like something that I crave, like the way that I used to think about alcohol. And the more that I understand it and what it's done, but how it's impacted me and other people, the more empathy I have, but also the more, while I tolerate, I see what we're capable of. And I also have a level of expectation for all of us in here to use the tools that we have to reach it. It's possible. And so part of me is also like, believe more in yourself, hold yourself to a higher standard, and take your time. And if you do it, like, just trust a little bit in this process, because you can't not do it your way anymore. And that just means this: simply listen to yourself. And I'll wrap it up with this. Ever since I was a kid, I had that feeling, and I personally couldn't get in trouble. I always got in trouble when I did something. But I feel like what I learned is that I was trying to search to understand God through a book and a Bible and what someone else told me. And instead, what I really have learned through this is in the taking the time, my sponsor guiding me, telling me one big thing at a time. But that big thing is something that's a prayer that's very direct. It's always going to, upon awakening, reminding myself to live into the state without self-seeking, and to be to not live in denial, to come fully. And like, that is, I'm opening myself, I'm responsible. We're responsible, right? So anyway, it's all, and God is just all around. And then that is God, that when you just feel and it comes. And that is like when we're feeling that, that's my will. That's me trying to do it. So I'm really, really learning that. And when I take the action that is aligned, that's using my sponsor as a guide and really learning, that's me practicing. That's me trying to do it differently. That fucking is hard. That hurts. That sucks. That makes me cry. That makes me angry. But then I get better. And I had somebody say to me a couple of days ago, they're like, yeah, but then after you've done it, like grown up and practiced, don't you look back and be like, whoa, I can't believe I did. And I'm like, yeah, I do too. It's interesting. You want to hang on to it, but then you're like, damn, so anyway, that's what I got.
Oh, you just went away, Scott.
Thank you, Eric. I'm sorry. I'm technologically challenged. Good evening, kids. I'm Scott Lee. I'm definitely alcoholic. I got a bad case of it. And I am very grateful for the chance to treat it tonight. So thank you, Eric. And thank you for Marissa for laying your heart on the table. I love that. I love that. And I love your opening. What great fun. What great fun. Man, we've worn how it works completely out as far as I'm concerned. I love it. Great fun. I like to open anything I do with a quotation from Lois Wilson, who was asked one time what she did in the moment of silence. And she said, I invite God to the meeting. It's not that I don't believe God's here. I do believe that. I get a special gift when I stop and do that. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to do that. Now, there might be somebody here who doesn't have a God who got here like I did, afraid there might be one based on what you've been told. If that's your situation, allow me to recommend that you borrow mine. I recommend him very highly. He's got a great sense of humor. And been keeping me sober continuously since the 28th of June of 1984. And that's a long time for a guy that only agreed to 28 days. So borrow mine. You can address him as a God of Scott's limited understanding, get you off on the right foot. And I'll just meet you back here. Let's take up a couple of moments and acknowledge the presence of deity. Amen. Thank you. Eric turned me loose tonight. I said, whatever I want to do. So I'm going to do just a very short drunk-a-log, just in case there's somebody new. I used to be bad to drink. And I used to be bad to drink when I was sure I wasn't going to drink. And when I first started drinking, it made me taller, smarter, better looking. I could talk to the girls, expert on many subjects, fantastic dancer. And I'd have paid a high price for any one of those, and did. But the big one was, for the first time in my life, something deep inside me went, huh. And it was okay to be Scott. It never had been. I became convinced as a very small boy that I was not good enough. Nothing I ever did could ever measure up. I became an actor as a small boy. And I'm acting all the time, trying to hold up the right mask. My mission, if I'm awake, is to keep you from seeing the real me. And it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that. I don't think alcohol kept me alive till I could get to you. I had the privilege of flying for the United States Air Force. Tom Cruise thought it was a MiG in Top Gun. I've got 100 missions in this. I'm pretty sure it's not a MiG. I don't know how many missions he's got in it, but anyway. And I was flying that thing. And I would get drunk the night before going to fly acrobatics in that airplane. Let me tell you about acrobatics. I can sleep on a roller coaster. That is nothing compared to what we're doing in that airplane. And I would drop by the club, planning to have one or two and be home by 6:30 or 7. Did you recognize the plan, by the way? That's plan A. But what happens is that by the time I get to the bottom of the second drink, plan B emerges. Plan B is I'm going to watch one more quarter of the ball game. I rack them up, Eric. We'll shoot a couple of more games. Right? Plan B is have just one or two more. And of course, you know what happens. And I wind up leaving the club at exactly 1 a.m. because they close. That's the only reason to leave. And drive home drunk with a hand over one eye. I bet there's some one-eyed drivers out there. And anyway, just it's this whole nasty story. And yet I couldn't see that I had a problem. And I received a great gift. I was put in treatment by a business partner who realized that I was in big trouble and saved my life. And so I don't care why anybody comes. I don't think there are any wrong reasons for doing the right thing. So what I'm going to do with it, I have the privilege every year of leading 2 or 3 men's retreats. I got one coming in a couple of weeks in Mobile, in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. But I like to open them with what we call a page 112 meeting. For those of you who brought your books to class, I'm probably going to be going too fast for you to follow along. But if you turn to page 112, you'll get the reason for it. First 3 words on page 112 are read this book. And that's how we open the meetings. The first meeting at the men's retreat, you got 3 minutes. Give us the page number first. Read us a paragraph or less from one place and tell us why you read it. You got 3 minutes or less. And we skip all over the book. I'm not going to invite you to play tonight, but I'm going to do a page 112 meeting for you. I'm going to hit the 4 or 5 pieces, individual pieces I think are the most important for the newcomer. And then some I was confused about. And I'm just going to play because if recovery isn't fun, I can't keep doing it. Page Roman numeral 22. This is forward to the 3rd edition, contains what I believe is the single most important phrase in the entire text. Absolute most important phrase in the text as far as I'm concerned. Roman numeral 22, it's just before the doctor's opinion. 3rd paragraph, 5th line. The 12 steps that summarize the program. That is some information right there. The steps, number 1, are not part of the program. They are the program. But the steps we see on the wall are a summary. That's the Cliff Notes. My sponsor said if you take the steps off the wall, you get an off the wall program. If that was the whole program, we'd have a pamphlet instead of a book. So it's necessary for me to go deeper. Then it describes down below the last paragraph, in spite of the great increase in the size and span of this fellowship, at its core remains simple and personal each day somewhere in the world. Recovery begins when alcoholics host another alcoholic sharing experience, drinking hopes. What we're doing here tonight. And you're in the fellowship of AA when you say you're in it. Page 164 describes another fellowship. Last large paragraph toward the bottom. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. You're free of what you find. You join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. The fellowship of the Spirit has different entrance requirements than the fellowship of AA. They look to me like the steps in narrative form. My experience has been I've seen a tremendous number of members of the fellowship of AA drink again. I have never seen a member of the fellowship of the Spirit drink again. I've only seen 2 people I know for certain do these steps drink again. I sponsored them both. One of them married his new higher power, and she didn't like how much time he spent with us. We say, I wonder how she likes him now. Well, she divorced him, so I guess not too well. He's back now carrying a 14-year chip. The other one's a hotel manager, and he was running the Dude Ranch in Arizona, 40 miles away from the nearest meeting, quit going. 2 years later, he drank for 2 weeks, and he's back carrying a 20-year chip now. It's only 2 people I know for sure that were in the fellowship of the Spirit, but they allowed their membership in the fellowship of the Spirit to lapse. And when that membership lapsed, they relapsed. I think it's kind of important information. So the 12 steps are where the magic is. And meetings are important. I think meetings are very, very important. My sponsor told me 38 years ago, if sitting around with a bunch of alcoholics talking about problems to get people sober, the boys on the Wyndham Street Bridge would be sober right now. Yeah. Page 46 has 2 of the most important concepts in the entire text for me. This is just my perception of it. The last paragraph begins with the word much. If you count up 3 lines above that, over toward the center, it says, it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. My sponsor says the teacup of my mind cannot contain the ocean of God. So get out of the business of understanding God. If God were small enough for me to understand, he wouldn't be big enough to handle the things I'm going to need for him to handle. So we talk about God as you understand him, we're saying you don't have to believe what anybody else ever told you. We don't care how qualified they claim to be. We couldn't care any less about that. 5 lines from the bottom on the same page. We found that God does not make too hard terms of those who seek him. Let me translate that into Tennessee English for you. This loving, laughing God who created the stars and the galaxies and the duck-billed platypus is a little bit too busy running a mighty universe to be angry with a turkey like you. Now have a seat and get that book out. We got some work to do. That's what that says. That's important information. As a matter of fact, that's one of the 2 best pieces of news I've ever gotten in my entire life. God ain't mad at Scott. Wow. Boy, that's some information. The other one's on page 62. Selfishness, self-centeredness, everything is the root of our troubles. Driven, not mildly disconcerted on rare occasion, by 100 forms of fear. Fear is the concern I may not get my will at some time in the future. Self-delusion, I believe my own BS. I've got 2 brain cells left. One of them creates BS, the other one buys it. Self-seeking, I ain't thinking about you at all. Self-pity, poor me, I didn't get what I wanted in the past. Poor me, I'm not getting what I want right now. Pour me a drink. At that point, my sponsor said, how'd you like some good news? I said, well, I'd like some good news. He said, how do you like the best news you're ever going to get in your entire life? I said, I'm open, hit me with it. He said, so our troubles, we think, are basically our own making. And I said, was that it? He said, that was it. I said, I don't get it. He said, if it really is the cops, the courts, the judges, the Russians, the Chinese, your future ex-wife, her mother, and their lawyer, if those people really are the problem, you lose. The good news is that you are the problem. And if you'll bring some willingness to this party, we can work on that. It didn't seem like it at the time. I sit here before you to tell you that's one of the 2 best pieces of news I ever got. Because if they have to move a quarter of an inch, I'm cooked. Absolutely cooked. The good news is that I'm the problem. The moment I become the problem, there's hope. That's an important piece. 151. I've always loved that number, by the way. You know, that stuff will take you downtown right now. You don't have to wait for that. Now and then there's being a serious drinker being dry moment says, oh, miss it all, feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a salad. We know our friends like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks to get away with them. Let me tell you, I don't have the slightest interest in being a social drinker. I don't get it. Having a drink with the boys on the way home from work, a beer while I mow the grass or watch the ball game, a glass of wine with this meal. No. A half a dozen, the way I pour, no consequences, we could talk. Being a social drinker makes no sense to me at all. Why would you like the fuse if you didn't want to hear it go boom? I don't get that. This next sentence for the newcomer may be the most important one in the book. It says he will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. Wait a minute. Does that mean if I'm going to get sober and stay that way, I'm going to have to find a way to be sober and happy at the same time? That is exactly what that means. That is precisely what that means. Because if this isn't fun, I can't keep doing it. I can't. And I don't have to, because it is fun. For those of you who are new, I should tell you, I'm sober 38 years. I have a number 1 problem in my life. It's a big one. I deal with it every day of my life, every day. My biggest problem is I've got more spectacular people in my life than I have time for. I cannot work them all in. Now, if you, Mr. Newcomer, would like to trade your biggest problem for that one, let me recommend you get one of these books and someone who's already done what's in this book and let them take you through it. And you'll wind up with that very same problem, because everybody I know that's done that has that very same problem. I want to touch on a couple of sentences that I misunderstood. Page 3 in Bill's story. Marissa was talking about Bill's story. Paragraph begins 2/3 of the way down the page. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing almost all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row. It is not a row. It's a word we don't use over here. I sponsor a guy in Scotland. He uses it all the time. It means a quarrel or an argument. I hope that helped, because that sentence didn't make any sense if it's row. If it's a quarrel or an argument, it makes tremendous sense. Put it into context. Couple more, page 66. That one and this one I'm about to do, I think, are the 2 most misunderstood sentences in the book. They were by me anyway. Halfway down the page. If we were to live, so this portion is actually only for the people that want to live. Everybody else take a short break. All right. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. About the time this book was being written, an ad executive on Madison Avenue named Osborne wrote a book on how his team put together an ad campaign. And he described a process where they'd sit around a table, they'd have a product out in front of them, And somebody'd say this, and somebody said, well, maybe we can do that. And Marissa would say this, and then Eric would say, let's do this, and that's what we do. Osborne labeled his process brainstorming. Walt Disney made the process famous by, that's how they created Mickey Mouse cartoons. Has absolutely nothing to do with the word brainstorm on this page. In the 1930s dictionary, I look up brainstorm. It says transient, violent mental outburst. That's rage. Has nothing to do with the creative process. So if you put it in context, excuse me, there are two kinds of anger. There's the grouch or the slow burn, and the brainstorm, rage, the detonation. That helped me a lot. Page 77, another one that I misunderstood. It helps me a lot if I read the black part, but I have to read all of the black part, which is, it's like following directions. It's not something I do naturally. Third line, page 77. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be a maximum service to God and people about us. So clearly, it is not my real purpose to be a maximum service to God and the people about me. I wouldn't have the faintest notion how to do that. I wouldn't know which way to turn out of the driveway. But to fit myself, I know how to do that. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, going to meetings, sponsoring, being sponsored, taking meetings into treatment centers and gated communities. That's a jail, you know. Going out of my way to try to carry this, I know how to do that. And as I fit myself to be maximum service, God can use me. The master craftsman reaches for the best tool laying the closest to his hand. My job isn't to do his work, it's to be the best tool I can be and reside as close to his hand as I can. And then I get used at his whim, not my own. Page 85, similar situation. It is easy to let up, but a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. If it's easy to let up, it must require some effort to not let up. We're headed for trouble if we do. Alcohol is a settled foe, we're not cured. We really have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Clearly, a reprieve, by the way, I looked it up as a stay of execution or a delay of punishment, is clearly not contingent on my spiritual condition. I don't know what my spiritual condition is. I'm not qualified to judge it. I wouldn't know how to grade it. I don't necessarily like spiritual growth. It's not something I do, it's something I receive. It's contingent on the maintenance of it. I'm a good judge of that, and I better be. I think maintenance means two things. Maintenance means to maintain in the sense of not losing something I've already got. It also means to maintenance in the same sentence that I maintenance my vehicle. I rotate the tires. I'm getting the oil changed on it tomorrow. I vacuum it out, I wash it. I maintenance my spiritual condition the same way I just did on 77. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, attending me, that whole thing. I need to keep a close look on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. And then I'm fine. Then I'm just fine. But I don't need to worry about what my spiritual condition is. And I don't need to worry about spiritual growth. It's not something I do, it's something I receive. What I have to do is continue to open myself up to receive it. And that's what those things are all about. Page 61. About a little past halfway down the page, you'll see, is he not, two sentences in a row. The second one says, is he not a victim of the delusion? He can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well. A delusion is a false belief or a psychotic belief. Rest means to take by tugging and pulling. What that says in Tennessee English is, I'm so insane that I think if I can get what I want, it will make me happy. How crazy is that if I will look at the truth? The truth is I have gotten what I wanted tens of thousands of times. I was not rendered happy. There's nothing out there I can achieve, acquire, or attain that will bring me happiness. Pleasure for a limited period of time? Absolutely. But the shine always wears off. I've been in the hardware industry back before there was software like hammers and nails. My company helped open the first Home Depot, and their management people made a lot of money. And a few years into that, one of their buyers who we called on ordered a Lamborghini, and they don't say what color you want, we'll box one up and ship it to you. You're going to wait 6 months. And he was insane for 6 months. You couldn't bring him a price decrease on his best-selling item for hearing about this deadgum Lamborghini. He got it. And 2 weeks later, he was tired of it. It took 2 weeks for the shine to wear off of a Lamborghini. Getting what I want will not make me happy. It never did. It absolutely never did. Page 8. 2/3 of the way down the page. I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. Einstein said the dimensions were width, depth, height, and time. Time being the fourth dimension. And the time I get catapulted into is a place the alcoholic rarely visits. That's right here, right now, between the clouds, right here, right now. I'm always off in the past, reliving victories, some of which may have actually happened, or I'm off in the future trying to figure it out. What if this, and what if the other, and plan A and plan B, and what if they find out? And I'm never right here, right now. Right here, right now. This present thing. That's where I get to come, right here, right now. Hardest assignment I've ever been given is one day at a time. The majority of the men I sponsor are sober over 20 years. Number one topic we talk about is sponsorship. Number two is staying in today. It's that hard. All the good questions contain the word today, and all the good answers contain the word today. And the question is, what am I doing about my relationship? It's the wrong question. Question, what am I doing about my relationship today? What do you do about my finances? What do you do about them today? You feel the difference in those questions? This right here, right now thing is a big dadgum deal. It's a big deal. Anyway, I want to continue on page 8 because Bill describes this fourth dimension in his own language, a little bit different from what Mr. Einstein said. He said I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that's incredible and wonderful as time passes. Happiness, I get that. Everyone wants that. Aristotle said that's what everyone wants. I want happiness for myself. Peace, yes, I want that too. I want it to be peaceful and calm in here. That's for me also. Usefulness, what is that doing on the list? That's for them. No, it's not. It's for me. I cannot find a direct route into happiness and peace. It is a side effect of being useful. Who'd have thunk it? Page 84. Third line, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. What in the world are uselessness and self-pity doing? How did they get together? The answer is the path out of self-pity is through being useful. I was diagnosed with cancer in my throat in June of 20. And the first thing, they took my teeth, as I'm sure you've noticed. They can't fit me with dentures, it doesn't matter. I'm a liquid diet. I can't swallow anything thicker than applesauce because of all the radiation they've done to me. And I realized very quickly what my assignment was. My assignment was to cheer up the people that are trying to cheer me up, because I don't need to be cheered up. I'm sitting in God's lap. Well, I was during COVID. This is the mask that I wear. I was wearing it at the VA the other day. I've had the respiratory crud. It's a medical term you probably know. And they got me on antibiotics. I'm really doing pretty good now. But this is I've been carrying the clown noses for a long time, because when the interstate comes to a stop in downtown Nashville, which is my hometown, instead of sitting there cussing, what I do is I get out a clown nose and put it on. And then I drop my window and I start blowing bubbles out the window to get the other driver's attention so they see the clown nose. When they see the clown nose, they start laughing. Laughter is contagious. I start laughing. We're still stuck in traffic. I've turned it into a party. Serving the God of love is not a part-time job. I will not have a tombstone, but if I were going to have one, that's what I want on it. Serving the God of love is not a part-time job. And what I've discovered is if I'm sloshing love and joy all over you, it splatters onto me every time. There's no way to block it. No way to block it. And I don't want to. I didn't know I was going to have, I'm going to go off down a rabbit trail. We may not get back. I discovered the source of all anger. I know where it all comes from. It comes from being right. I've never been angry. Well, and also absolutely certain I was right. Being right comes from having passed judgment. So judgment is the grandmother of anger. I have to judge to be right, to be angry. If I don't judge, it never happens. I figured that out. It's been a little over 8 years ago. And I added to my morning prayer, God bless me this day, that I don't judge anyone. And I got immediate relief, not perfection, but I'm telling you, it went into the high 90s. I was astounded at how fast I got help with. When I ask God for what he wants me to have, I get a lot of help, the tricks for me to get the right question. And that's apparently for me one of the right questions. Bless me, please, that I don't judge anyone today. Bless me, please, that I might love them all as you do, especially those that I deem unlovable. It's changed my life. It's absolutely changed my life. Also has been blessed me. I don't judge any situations. I was sitting by a stream some time ago, and I looked across and I saw a thundercloud. And I thought, every drop of rain in that thundercloud's following God's will perfectly. And so is that tree, and so is the bird sitting in the tree, and so are those minnows in the stream. Why can't I? I got my answer. I am. I'm convinced to the depths of my soul it's not my job to be perfect. If it's not my job to be perfect, what's my job? It's to make mistakes. They've sent the right guy. Yeah. And I've been told all my life we learn from our mistakes, and it's not true. We learn from living with the results of our mistakes. Hold that thought, read the 12 steps. Half of them are about me embracing the results of my mistakes. 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11 are all about embracing the results of my mistakes. So here's the learning process as I understand it today. 1, make a mistake. 2, be notified. I don't always know I made a mistake. 3, own the mistake. Yeah, that was me. And if they only know 80%, I got to tell them the other 20. That's how I own the mistake. 4, consult a spiritual advisor about how to 5, make the amend. Usually, not always, there's an amend. 6, embrace the lesson. It's the lesson comes with the making of the amend, not with the making of the mistake. Here's the definition. A mistake is an invitation to a lesson. The evidence is if I learned the lesson, would not have made a mistake. And I don't have the power to make a mistake so ugly that this loving, laughing God can't turn it into something magnificent. That's who I am, it's who he is. It is that simple. It is that simple. 6, embrace the lesson. 7, share the lessons, what sets it. 8, when I share the lesson, I have to tell you I made a mistake. If I just share the lesson, I'm preaching and not too many want to hear it. When I stand as a sinner beside a sinner, he can hear me. 9, make the next mistake. It's not okay that I make mistakes. It's my job. It's why I'm here. It's why I was put in this thing, in this body. It's why I'm stuck in here. It's so that I can make the mistakes and go through that process and embrace the lessons. So I have now my own permission to make mistakes. There is a freedom in that. The other half of the freedom is you have my permission to make mistakes. That includes 2 former wives, those of you who got your driver's licenses out of Cheerios boxes, Vladimir Putin, some people, politicians in this country, they have my permission to make mistakes. Because if I'm going to be upset by their behavior, I'm a prisoner of their behavior. And I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. I was a prisoner long enough. So the freedom is 2 pieces. My own permission to make a mistake. I expect me to make a mistake. I'm convinced it's God's will for me is to make mistakes and go through that process. And you have my permission to make mistakes. And it has absolutely freed me. I cannot begin to tell you how freeing that is. Roman numeral 16. I'm sorry. Let's go to page 15 first. I got way more to cover than I got time here. I'm real fond of this book, Eric. I really like as you guys work out of it. It's the blue one, Page 15, Bill's story. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm. The idea of helping other alcoholics to solution their problems was fortunate. My old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. I was not too well at the time. Listen to the power in these words. Plagued. What a word. Plagued by waves of the 2 great killers of alcoholics, self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. I soon find when all other measures failed, work with an alcoholic to save the day. Many times I've gone to my hospital in despair. Despair means without hope. You have to go down through depression to get down to despair. I'm talking to a man there. I'd be amazing to lift up and set on my feet. It's a design for living works. I'm going. It worked for me in this cancer. I got into depression twice for about 20 minutes, both times. I knew what to do. I did exactly what that said. I picked up my phone and called you and said, how can I be of service? It brought me right up out of it. It's one of the most amazing. I've read this book quite a bit. And there are a number of concepts I can chase through the book and find on 5 or 6 pages. The number one concept appears more often in this book than anything else is help others. I read the book once from Roman numeral 11 through 164, looking specifically for that. I found 52 of them. I can't go past 6 on any other concept. It's the big deal. Help others. Roman numeral 16, XVI. Bill Wilson's about to leave the Oxford groups. He's going to take some, but not all. 10 lines down. Though he could not accept all the tenets of the Oxford groups, he was convinced of the need for moral inventory, confession of personality defects, restitution of those harmed, helpfulness to others. Here comes the one that lights me up. And the necessity, I wonder if that's important. The necessity of belief in and dependence upon God. Bill separates belief in God from dependence upon God. Belief is not enough. I came to you kind of more or less pretty much believing there was a God and not having a higher power. It is for me, as I learned that healthy dependence, that I began to have a higher power. Page 456. I took a meeting into one of the gated communities a number of years ago. It was a state prison. They had big books with stories. Let me tell you what, if you're going into one of those places, do a page 112 meeting in there and see what you learn. Page 456. I'm going to find it here in a minute. 5 lines from the bottom. AA has accomplished so many things in my life today. Given me my sanity and all-around sense of balance. Now, willing to listen, take suggestions I've found. The process of discovering who I really am begins with knowing who I really don't want to be. Kids, that's the first 9 steps. Is finding out who I really don't want to be. And it's also a snapshot of my life without God in it. That's exactly what those are. Bottom of 457, last paragraph. From experience, I've realized I cannot go back and make a brand new start, but through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end. I love you. I'm out of time.